Hello friends, my name is Galina Filipenko. I'm Ukrainian but currently live in Poland. I'm a design team member from Studio Katia and I'm a big fan of card making and especially shaker cards. Thank you for joining the clear and fancy card making class. If you will have any questions, feel free to write them in comments. I'm going to show you a few fun ideas how to make a spectacular birthday cards using Studio Katia craft kit. At first, I will quickly go through the kit to show you what's in the box. It came beautifully packed in a tissue paper with some pretty stickers. And this box is full of awesome stuff. So with this box you will get a special 6x6 stencil with a chunky sprinkles pattern, a blender brush to apply inks through the stencil or directly on a paper. Super strong liquid glue from Studio Katia. It's perfect glue for adhering tiny embellishments or acetate sheets. And of course you will get some embellishments. 3 packs with the beautiful crystals and 1 pack with the clay sprinkles. And here is one more embellishment, a little jar with iridescent clear glitter. I love to display such little jars near my craft table. Next, we have a few double-sided adhesive foam squares. With this kit you will receive 2 clear stamps, one with a big solid sentiment and one with a birthday cake. The birthday cake stamp goes with a coordinating die. Those stamps are big enough to use them as a focal point on the card. Next in the box are acetate sheets. In this class we will use them a lot and you will get 4 6x6 acetate sheets. Last but not least are pattern papers. And let's start. For the first card you will need a piece of colored cardstock. We're going to create a kind of a big birthday cake under the clear gift box right on the card. And this gray piece is the base for the cake. The gray cardstock is slightly smaller than A2 card base size. I made all my cards in the size of a standard A2 US cards, which is 14 cm high and 11 cm wide. And first I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment on the panel. I'm using my anti-static bag to remove a static from the paper. If you don't have an embossing tools or pigment ink, you can use a light brown cardstock for the cake base and regular inks for stamping and stenciling. I'm stamping the birthday sentiment with a Versamark clear ink. It's a special stick ink for embossing. I'm stamping the sentiment slightly above the center of the grid panel. I need to leave more space on the bottom of the card panel for embellishments. I'm going to cover stamped sentiment with a fine detailed white embossing powder. This image has wide and thin lines, so you can use a regular embossing powder too. I'm tapping off the excess powder and I need to put the powder back to the jar because powder always scatters on my table. Now I can melt the powder with my heat gun. I turned on the heat tool and I let it warm up for a few seconds. I keep it moving in small circles to help prevent burning. After done with heat embossing, I will move into stenciling. I'm flipping over the card panel and I put small pieces of washi tape to secure the stencil. I'm flipping it over again and I covered the card panel with a chunky sprinkle stencil. With a few more pieces, I taped the stencil to a glass mat. It's very important to secure the stencil well to get a nice crisp pattern on the paper. Let me get out of the box my distress oxide inks. This kind of inks is perfect for dark surfaces. Here I have tumbler glass, mustard seed, worn lipstick and twisted citron. I'm going to combine all these colors to create a multicolored pattern. Oh, and you will need a cloth or paper towel to clean the blender brush. I'm starting by applying a bright yellow ink. I'm applying ink with a circle motion and I applied it only a small area of the panel. I get a small yellow circles on the top and the bottom of the stencil. And I want to apply yellow on this corner too. Before I add the next color, I'm cleaning the blending brush. You can wet it a bit for easier color removing. My next color is a light blue distress oxide ink. I'm going to apply it through the stencil in the same way. I can see that I didn't clean well the blender brush and I get a mint color instead of a light blue, but I like that even more. Don't be afraid to mess the colors on the ink pads. You can remove other color with a paper towel. And I'm again cleaning the brush using the cloth because I'm moving to the next color. This is my second try to apply a blue color. I'm going to use another ink pad called Salty Ocean. As you can see, I'm trying to avoid adding ink in the center, just because there is my sentiment. I'm not sure if this kind of ink dries on the smooth surfaces like embossing powder. While I'm adding a bright blue color, I'm trying to leave some spots for my last color. I decided to finish this panel without a green color. My last color is a warm lipstick. And I'm adding just a little bit of this ink. I think I filled the wall stencil with inks and now I can remove the stencil. This is the best moment in this technique and here is a finished pattern. I love that I left the mink ink on the panel, it looks fabulous. I'm going to put away the stencil and my tools and I'm cleaning the stencil with the same cloth. A few seconds and stencil is like new. I always try to clean my work area and put away all the tools that I will no longer use. Otherwise, I end up with a pile of rubbish on the table and I will work only on a small empty piece of table. To decorate my cake, I'm going to use a clay embellishment, which you can find in the kit. I put the sprinkles in a small triangle tray and I will use this tray to spread them on the panel. Next, I grab a silicone brush to apply glue. But this tool is really optional. You can use a regular brush or piece of paper to spread your glue over the card panel. To adhere the clay embellishments, I'm going to use liquid glue from Studio Katia. It's very strong glue and it will hold the sprinkles well. This glue has a nice fine tip and I'm going to draw a curved line with it. I'm going to create a cake icing using this glue. I'm applying a big amount of glue on the card panel. I don't have any specific pattern for this step. I made a freehand drawing icing on the top of the card panel. Next, I'm going to apply a lot of glue on the edge and with silicone brush I spread the glue all over the paper. This glue will not dry in seconds because I applied a big amount of it and I will have enough time to spread it and add the clay embellishments. As I was saying, you can spread the glue with a regular paintbrush too, but you have to clean it with water right away. I'm going to cover the top of the edge with the clay sprinkles. I slightly pressing them to the paper with my finger, and I'm trying to move them a bit to fill all the gaps. This glue will dry transparently, so don't worry to miss some sprinkles. In the same way, I applied glue on the bottom of the card panel. But on the bottom I made this icing edge a little thinner. I want to leave a space between the sentiment and clay embellishment to add the ribbon at the end. And again, I am adding the clay embellishments while glue is still wet. I always adhere all the tiny embellishments on my cards using this kind of glue, because I can be sure this glue will hold the embellishments real well. And I'm trying to collect all these scattered remains of clay embellishments back into the tray, and I'm putting them into the packing. I still have enough of sprinkles for another card. Next, I'm going to adhere the card panel on the card base. I'm using a white double-sided adhesive tape. Actually, it's no matter what type of adhesive to use on the step. Just grab what you have close to you. I'm going to adhere the panel on a A2 card base, so I will have a nice white border around the gray panel. I am removing the backing paper from the card panel, and before attaching the panel, I need to check the right side of the card base. I love to adhere card panels upside down. I hope I'm not alone with this problem. So I'm lightly press the card panel to the card base. I'm trying to make it carefully because the glue doesn't dry yet, and I need to avoid touching these embellishments. And I already love this card, but I'm going to add few extra details, like black shadows behind the letters. You can skip this step, but I like how sentiments pop up with the black shadows. I'm using a black liner pen. You can use a fine tip black marker or even a pencil. And the shadow don't have to be a black color. It can be gray or maybe a dark brown color. It's up to you. I'm tracing each letter of the sentiment only from one side. If you will trace all the sides of the letters, you will ruin the shadow effect. And you will get just a two-colored sentiment. Sorry about seeing my head, but I'm trying to be very accurate and trace these letters nicely. And now let's create a gift packing for our cake. You will need a piece of acetate sheet. The 6x6 sheet from the kit will be enough for this size of the card. And it's better to use this acetate sheet from Studio Katia because they are flexible, and this sheet is thin but quite dense acetate sheet. Next, you will need a scoreboard or any other score tool you may have. Use a bond folder with a ruler and silicone mat to make a score lines on the acetate sheet. I put my acetate sheet on the scoreboard and I'm using a bond folder with a metal tip to make a score lines. My line's going to be scored at 1/2 quarter. It's the first line on the scoreboard. Next, I'm going to score on the second line. It's 1/4 inch. Next, I measure the size of the grid panel plus some extra space. The size came out about 4 inches. And I'm going to make 3 more score lines on the acetate sheet with the same distance between them. After that, I'm rotating the acetate sheet at 90 degrees and score again 2 lines. At 1/2 quarter and 1/4 inch. Now I need to measure a second wider part of the card panel and score the last 2 lines. I need to admit it will be harder to score the acetate sheet than a regular paper. Make sure you give a little bit more pressure on your bond folder. In a moment I will show you this sheet closer. Just let me put up the scoreboard back. Here's how score line look like. I hope my camera can catch those lines. If you will have questions about measurements, please contact me or tag me on Facebook. I will try to answer you guys. Now I'm putting back my sheet on the mat and I will turn back the focus on my camera. I'm using my craft knife to cut off the excess from the sheet. You can use the scissors as well. But with craft knife it cuts nicely. And I'm cutting the excess from another side just a little bit. To make the box more accurate, I'm going to cut out all the corners, like this. Remember, less is more, and first cut just a little bit. You can return to the step later and cut off more if needed. I'm going to fold all the lines. I'm starting from the middle of the sheet and I'm trying to press them well. Here you can see why I cut off the corners. Both sides of the box fold nicely, but I'm going to cut off one more little piece from this corner, and now I love the result. I will check the rest of the corners and I will cut them off a bit. Next, I put a thin double-sided adhesive tape on all sides of the state box. The clear box fits perfectly, just check it. Also, I put a double-sided tape on the back of the red ribbon. I cut two small ribbon pieces slightly bigger the card panel. I'm removing the backing paper and I'm going to stick those ribbons on the card panel to create a look of a gift box. I stick the first ribbon under the sentiment. That's why I was needed an extra space between the sentiment and clay sprinkles. The second ribbon I'm going to stick vertically on the right side of the card. I'm going to fold these ribbons on the back side of the clear box. They will stick to the adhesive tape on the edges of the box. After that, I'm going to cut off the excess ribbon with scissors. Finally, I can remove the backing paper from the box to adhere it on the card. I'm adding tiny drops of liquid glue to secure the ribbons on edges. And here is a serious moment. You need to stick the clear box to the card base. I tried to stick the clear box exactly in the middle of my card. The box is adhered. I press it a bit to the card base to make sure it holds everywhere. The last element is a bow. I put a small amount of liquid glue on the ribbon and I'm going to adhere a bow. It was made auto camera by my husband because he is a bow master. And I can tie pretty bows. It's my worst secret. And I'm going to cut a bit those ribbons near the bow. My third card is done. I love how bright it is and I love that this card has an extra protection and clay sprinkles are safe in this box. It turns out not so thick as I was thinking and I will not have any problems with mailing this card. I hope you will like this clear box idea. Using acetate sheet, you can create smaller boxes or dimensional shaker cards. Okay, let's move to the second card. I cut out a card panel using a rainbow pattern paper from the kit. And on the left, I have two smaller white panels. One for shaker background and one for a stamped cake. At first, I'm going to create a rectangle frame from the rainbow paper. If you have a nasty rectangle dies, the process will be much faster. Simply use two dies to cut out the frames for this card. And I will show you how to create this card without dies. I flip over the pattern paper and I'm going to trace the first white panel with a pencil. I put the paper right in the middle. You can secure these two panels with washi tape or hold with a hand. Trace the panel from all four sides. I will use these lines as a guide to cut out the frame. I'm taking a ruler and craft knife and I'm going to cut each line. I'm rotating the paper and cut out again. Using scissors, I'm cut out the paper on corners. And I'm carefully removing the inner piece from the frame. This piece I will use a little bit later. Here how the frame looks with the white panel. Next, I'm taking a smaller white panel and I'm going to trace it on the pattern paper as I made with a bigger piece. I need to find a center and hold the paper there. And I'm tracing it with pencil. Next, inside of this rectangle, I draw an inner frame and I cut out inner lines and outer lines as well. And again, to remove the inner piece from the frame, I need to cut off the corners. Also, I get two leftover pieces from the pattern paper. I will use them for another card. In the end, I will show you all my cards I made with this kit. I want to decorate the white panel with a colorful pattern. I'm covering the panel with a stencil and I'm taping it to the glass mat using washi tape. I bring out two distress inks, a bright yellow color called mustard seed and a bright pink color called picked raspberry. I'm going to apply those inks using a blender brush. And I start with a yellow color. This time I'm going to apply one color on the wall panel. After that, I want to clean the stencil before removing it. I'm wiping off the leftover ink using a dry cloth. If you want to clean the stencil better, remove it and wipe off with a water or using a baby wipe. I'm removing and rotating the stencil and I put it back on the paper. I clean my brush with the same cloth and I'm going to apply a second color. I picked a lot of ink on the brush to get a nice intense color on the paper. And again, I'm covering the wall panel with one color of ink. After I'm done with ink blending, I'm wiping the stencil again to clean it well and store in the pocket without pink ink. I removed the stencil and I absolutely adore this pattern. You can rotate the stencil and apply ink a few more times if you want. In that way you will get absolutely another pattern. So with this one stencil you can create a variety of patterns. I want to remove the washi tape from the card panel and put back my distress inks. I leave this panel and frame for some time and I will move on to the stamping process. I will use a beautiful cake stamp from the kit. I put it on a large acrylic block and I'm going to stamp it on a small white panel. I'm applying a black magenta ink on the stamp. I'm using an alcohol-friendly ink because I will color this image with my Copic markers. And I'm stepping it in the center of white panel. As I was saying, for coloring, I'm going to use Copic markers. I picked some light shades from my stash. I will leave the caps with number near the paper so you can see which color I used. You can color this image with any color medium you may have. You can use pencil, inks or watercolor paints, anything you want. But remember to use a specific waterproof black ink if you want to watercolor the image. I have all the color mediums and I can't even choose which is my favorite. I also colored this image with the pencils and I created a one-layered card. I will show you it a little bit later. To color the cake, I used light brown colors E000, E21 and E23. I'm starting from the lightest color and with next layers I will add a darker shades. I'm blending the medium shade with the lightest marker. I'm trying to apply darkest colors on the edges of the cake to create a more realistic look. To create shadows on the cake, use a dark color marker. Try to blend it with a medium color to avoid harsh lines. For icing on the cake, I'm going to use B000, B21 and B23. It's my favorite blue color combo, and this combo is perfect for coloring the sky and water too. I'm applying the lightest shades on edges. Next, I'm applying darker color to create the shadows. For me, it's a super relaxing process. I love to prepare a cup of tea and turn on my favorite music while I'm coloring. Sometimes I can spend few hours to color stamped images only for a one card. Yes, sometimes I go crazy with coloring, but I enjoy this process. Feel free to color this image only with one color without any shading. It will look great anyway. Also, you can stamp this cake with different colors of inks and create a pattern with cakes. If you like to color with Copic markers, I will share with you another color combos for these images. It has so many options. Please tell me, are you a colorist or you prefer one color stamping? It will be fun to know how many Copic fans are here. I finished the coloring with the blue markers and let me put these caps back, and we're moving to color the cream inside of the cake. I decided that my cake will be with a fruit filling, so I'm coloring those thin lines with the two pink markers. The darker one is RV34 and the lightest marker is RV21. To color the candles, I'm going to use only one green marker. The number is G43. It's a warm light green color, perfect for my today's color combo. Next, I'm going to add details on the image. I'm using a white gel pen to draw small lines and some tiny dots. This step is optional and you can skip it if you want to. Also, with a white gel pen, you can create a texture of a biscuit. I think those white elements give more interest to the stamped image. Have you ever used a gel pen on the stamped images? And I want to show you the coloring result closer. Here how the cake looks like after coloring and adding some details and shadows. I absolutely love it. To create a shaker on the card, I'm going to use another acetate sheet from the kit. I'm going to apply a double-sided adhesive tape on the back of my colorful frame. I'm using a thinner tape in my stash and I'm adhering it on the wall frame. You can use a small tape runner or even a liquid glue from Studio Katia. I have tested it with an acetate sheet and a paper, and this glue sticks to materials really well. But it takes some time to dry them out. And you can't move any of shaker elements until the glue dries. Next, I'm going to adhere the tape on the back of the smaller frame. After that, I'm removing the backing paper. And I'm attaching the backing frame to that stage sheet. Love this frame already. I'm taking the smaller frame and I'm removing the backing paper from it too. I'm going to stick it right in the center. And I'm using a grid lines on my glass mat to find the right position for this frame. Now I can cut out the excess acetate. I'm taking a ruler and I cut the edge with a craft knife. And I'm cutting off the bigger piece from the right side from the frame. I can keep these leftover pieces for some little shaker elements. At last, I'm going to cut out a window in the center of the frame. On the step, it's easier to cut out with a craft knife. I simply cut all inner edges of the frame. And here comes the last cut. To finish the shaker base, I need to add a dimension to it. I'm adhering a double-sided foam stripes on the back of the frame. It's better to use a white adhesive tape for this card, but I can't find anywhere my white foam stripes. So I will use the black ones. I'm cutting off the rest of the stripes and I will use them again. Also, you can cut a thin stripes from a wider tape. I will put foam stripes behind the smaller frame too. Those stripes are quite long and I need only 3 of them plus one small piece to finish the shaker base. To clean my scissors from the adhesive tape, I will use a cotton pad with a rubber alcohol. I will wipe them a bit and alcohol will remove the adhesive. Next, I grab the card panel with colorful sprinkles and I'm adding liquid glue on the back of it. I'm going to adhere this panel on a white A2 card base. I'm placing it in the center with a white border around. Over the frame and I'm going to draw a small pencil marks just to know where the centerpiece should be added. I'm adding liquid glue on a smaller rectangle panel with a beautiful cake on it. I put a frame on the card base to check that the smaller rectangle is positioned correctly. It looks fine. To fill the shaker, I'm going to use a multicolored embellishments. It's a mix of different size colorful crystals and they are super shiny. And I add a lot of them on my card and I need to move them a bit because they should be only inside of the bigger frame. After adding these crystals, I will cover them with a shaker base. And here how it looks after adding all the elements. I get a fancy card with a rectangle shaped shaker. I'm very passionate about shaker cards. I think I can play with them for hours. And this kind of cards always brings a smile on my friends' faces. And no matter how old they are, really. Also, I stamped a multicolored birthday sentiment inside of the card. And how I made it, I will show you in a moment. For this stamping technique, you will need 2 or more colors of your favorite inks. I will use my distress oxide inks. On the top of the stamp, I'm applying a bright yellow color called mustard seed. And on the bottom of the stamp, I'm going to apply a pink color called picked raspberry. I'm overlapping the pink color over the yellow to create a nice blend of colors. And I think I need a little bit more of yellow. Okay, next I'm stamping on the paper. And I get a 2-colored stamped image. I prefer to remove any of harsh lines on the stamped images, so I take a pink color Copic marker and I blend a bit those lines. That's how I create a multicolored stamped images. Super easy technique, right? I want to give you a closer look of my boss cards from this class. They are super fancy with lot of pretty details and it was so much fun to make them. They don't have a lot of dimensions, so they fit a standard envelope easily. In the next month, 3 of my friends will have a birthday, and I plan to send them cards that I made with this card making kit. I can't wait to hear their reaction. Also, I want to show you some bonus projects. These 2 cards were made by the owner of Studio Katia. They are super cool. I love how we can create a different projects with the same materials. And I love how Katia used a pattern paper to create a background for the cake. She colored the stamped image with some yellow alcohol markers and look how she decorates the icing on the cake. She added chunky glitter on it. Love the shiny cake. For the second card, she created a shaker using a coordinating cake die. She made a simple coloring on the stamped image and she put a glitter as well as clay sprinkles in the shaker. She decorated the card panel with yellow, pink and green inks, which she applied through the stencil from the kit. And Katia placed the shaker base on the black and white patterned paper. Okay, I will play with the shaker card a little bit later, because I want to share with you the rest of my cards. As I promised, I am showing my other card, which I colored with pencils. I stamped a lot of cakes on the craft paper using a clear embossing ink to create tone-on-tone look. Next, I drew a heart with a pencil in the center of the card panel, and I colored images only inside of this heart. Below the colored cake, I stamped a sentiment with brown ink. I added few transparent crystals to decorate the card. And here's a closer look of this card. How cool is it? And let's move to my other cards. On this card, I built a scene with the smoke from the cake, which appears as a birthday greeting above the cake. I simply traced the stamped sentiment with a light gray marker to create a smoke on the white panel. I used leftover piece of patterned paper with a rectangle window in the center, and I decorate this window with a chunky glitter. I adhered it on a thin double-sided adhesive tape. For my next card, I stamped cakes 3 times and I cut them out with a coordinating die. I colored all these cakes with the Copic markers. I foam mount the cakes on the white card base and I stamped a sentiment with a dark brown ink. I decorate the top of the card with a lot of colorful crystals. I attach the crystals with a liquid glue and with an embellishment wand from Studio Katia. And for this card, I created one more clear box using acetate sheet. And I made a shaker from it. I put a lot of clear crystals inside of this box. Also, I stamped a sentiment on the acetate sheet using a specific ink called Stazone ink. Only with a Stazone ink you can stamp on such kind of surfaces. But if you don't have such kind of ink, you can stamp a sentiment on the card background. Also for this card, I used a leftover oval piece from my next card. Here is a simple shaker card I made only with the patterned paper. I cut out an oval window using a nesting oval die from Studio Katia, and I put a transparent crystals inside of the shaker. This card is super simple, but shaker makes it cool and fancy. I love all these cards and I can't pick a favorite one. If you have a favorite card from this set, please write me. I was happy to join this card making event. I found so much inspiration from this community. Please don't forget to visit Studio Katia blog. Each week I share a new card making tutorial. Thank you so much for joining me today. Stay safe. Bye.